I think the conviction was unsafe. There are a number of poor data quality issues, including diagnostics and forensics, chemistry. But yes, the danger of the terms of reference of the Thirlwell inquiry is that it doesn't follow through on all the deaths and all the problems at the Countess of Chester Hospital. It only considers those in which Lucy Letby was considered to be responsible.
Now, a group, including some of the UK's leading neonatal experts and professors of statistics, is calling on the government to postpone or change the terms of a public inquiry over concerns about the conviction of the neonatal nurse Lucy Letby. The public inquiry, it's led by Lady Justice Thirlwell. It was set up last September after Letby was found guilty of the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 6 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital. The inquiry was adjourned until after Letby's retrial on a charge on which the original jury had been unable to reach a verdict. That trial finished in July. It resulted in her being found guilty of the attempted murder of another baby. Let's find out from one of those experts what the issue is as we drill into this. Joining me now is Professor Jane Hutton, who's a statistician at Warwick University and specialises in survival analysis. Good evening to you, Jane.
Good evening.
Tell me why you're concerned about the data, the statistics used in the conviction of Lucy Letby.
Well, I'm concerned that the conviction might not be safe because of what we know so far about the data presented by the CPS. Of course, the police have probably collected a lot more data, but I can only discuss what we've seen being presented.
Okay,
and that raises a series of statistical questions.
So tell me about your issues with that data.
Well, the most obvious one is the chart that the barrister presented many times to the jury. It's misleading at a number of levels. Firstly, it doesn't. It has multiple lines. Some babies without marking that up, so you're double counting. You don't see twins and triplets being marked. The Royal College of Pediatrics had criticised the whole unit, particularly lack of medical rounds, but we have no information on when the medical rounds were done. And there's also no information about rates. And most importantly, I don't think we have a clear definition of an unexplained event. We know that there are another 15 families, in addition to the 13 families involved, where it was considered that Lucy, that there was an untoward event. We need to know about those events as well, because if you're saying that half your events were murder, you still have to explain the other half and how you managed to distinguish them.
To be absolutely clear, you're not saying that Lucy Letby was convicted wrongly, but that some of the data that was used to convict her may focus too much on her and not on the departmental failings within that neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital.
So I would say 2 things. One, I think the conviction was unsafe. There are a number of poor data quality issues, including diagnostics and forensics, chemistry. But yes, the danger of the terms of reference of the Thirlwell inquiry is that it doesn't follow through on all the deaths and all the problems at the Countess of Chester Hospital. It only considers those in which Lucy Letby was considered to be responsible.
So the issue here is that there could have been departmental failings,
yes,
as well as the failings of and the criminality of Lucy Letby. Let's be clear about that. But that this inquiry will not focus on the wider department, just on Lucy Letby. And so the danger is that although Lucy Letby is in prison for her crimes, this could happen again either at this hospital or at other hospitals if lessons are not learned.
That's right. I mean, it was very clear from the Royal College Child Health and Paediatrics report that there were very serious failings, particularly relating to the medical doctors and indeed to the lack of advanced nurse practitioners.
And there was some information about the accuracy of door swipe data as well, relied on by the prosecution to show that Letby had been alone when the babies collapsed, and that was incorrect. Police had wrongly thought that the swipe data showed nurses leaving the neonatal unit and going into the labour ward when in fact they were returning to the neonatal unit. Is that one of the examples of sort of some of the anomalies, some of the inaccuracies that we're talking
Yes,
about here?
that's one example. I mean, another question I would have is, when parents enter, do they swipe in and out? And is it possible for two nurses or a nurse and a doctor to enter at the same time? You know, does it? It's. I don't think it'll be a turnstile where only one person can enter at a time. And there's also a question, of course, of whether there's a internal route that doesn't involve swiping cards.
What else was going on in that department? Just leaning into the Royal College's report. What else do we know?
We know that, if I remember correctly, that the doctors were criticised, the junior doctors were criticised for being unwilling to seek help when they need it. The senior doctors were criticised for being unwilling to come. As I recollect, the comment was that there were ward rounds 2 or 3 times a week when there should have been 2 ward rounds a day. There's also, I think, evidence that a number of, sometimes when tubes were being inserted by medical staff, they got them wrong. So there do seem to have been a problem. There's also, of course, been the problem of sewage and infection, which would be a very substantial problem. We know that the doctors wrote to management saying they didn't have enough resources, they didn't have enough nursing care. So there are quite a number of other problems that were highlighted. And I think depending on how you look at it, the spike in deaths, there certainly was an increase in deaths which needed to be investigated. There's no doubt on that. But I'm very far from sure that the court cases actually explained the deaths by saying that they were the result of murders. I think there are other deaths that are unexplained.
That should also be looked at in the context of this, rather than, look, she's a convicted criminal, but as well as looking at what Lucy Letby did, wider context needs to be taken about the performance and the behaviours within that neonatal unit. Look,
forgive me for correcting you.
Go on.
But to the best of my knowledge, there is no evidence of anything that Lucy Letby did. There are assertions of what she must have done, but she was never observed to do anything. Is that correct? She wasn't observed to inject oxygen. She wasn't observed.
She was never observed in the killing of those babies. You're absolutely right. It is based on data, some of which you question. The door swipe data. For example, was she on her own or not?
It's not just the door swipe data. I mean, for example, one of the things I've worked with is how you diagnose disease, and there are very well established methods for checking the validity of a diagnostic method. Now, I don't know whether looking at a rash is a reliable diagnostic method, but you ought to be presenting evidence of true positives, true negatives, if you're going to use a rash as a diagnostic tool for air embolisms. And also, as a statistician, if somebody gives me something with a warning in red letters saying, do not use this data for this purpose, I would have to have quite a good reason for ignoring that warning.
Can I ask you just very briefly, Professor Jane Hutton, 4 judges have refused Lucy Letby leave to appeal the first verdicts. An application to appeal the later verdict, the more recent one, is understood to be pending. Based on what you've seen so far, should Lucy Letby be allowed to appeal?
I certainly do not. From what I know so far, I think the conviction is unsafe and she should be allowed to appeal.
Look, thank you for speaking to us. It's absolutely fascinating. And look, it hasn't been delayed. We know the inquiry, but there could still be discussions about the terms of it.